All right, what's going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Timeout with Doc and Caveman. As always, you are here with Dr. Fantasy and my co-host, the Fantasy Caveman. We are rolling through our NBA prospect profiles. Today, we're going to be talking about Corey Kispert, who was a senior last season at Gonzaga, 6'7", 224 pounds. Last season as a senior, he averaged 18.6 points, 5 rebounds, and then had some very impressive percentages, 52.9% from the field as a whole, 44% from three, and then nearly 88% from the free throw line. So I'm sure all things we'll talk about in his strengths, but Caveman, do you have a fun fact on Corey Kispert? And you're laughing,
Uh,
so I don't
yeah.
know what that means.
Okay, so Corey Kispert was actually recruited by Virginia and by Tony Bennett. But back in the recruiting process, Tony Bennett said that he didn't see Kispert play against high enough competition, so they didn't sign him. So when Gonzaga finally got the chance to play Virginia, Corey Kispert decided to drop a career high 32 points
Is that
and
all?
just kind of stick it to him. So I just find it funny the fact that Tony Bennett in Virginia turned him down, and then he goes in and puts in a career high versus them.
Mhm.
Only
My
thing.
my kind of guy.
Yeah. So you already mentioned it with some of his percentages, but the biggest thing with him is his excellent 3-point shooting. As you see, a lot of the highlights that you're going to see are going to be his 3-point shooting. The form is nice. It's consistent. He consistently knocks it down. Uh, and it's not like he was only taking a couple. Like he was shooting 44% on like 6.5 attempts a game.
Hmm.
So he was taking quite a bit of threes, and he was making them. So that with the amount of 3-point shooting at this next level, that's going to be huge for him. And big uh the big thing that I noticed with him, and uh which is also going to help him at the next level, he moves really great without the ball. Uh you know, you're not always going to have the ball in your hands at the next level, so he's gonna have to, and this is gonna help him. He's gonna have to adjust and kind of run off screens and just run without the ball to try to get open. And he did that exceptionally well. As oh, nice deep three. Uh, so that's really gonna help him out at the next level too. The fact that he's able to move so well without the ball.
Yeah, and you mentioned a lot of it. I mean, his stroke is very smooth. He has a pretty quick release, which I like to see as well. I mean, all the percentages are exactly what you want to see. I feel like this is going to be an Aaron Neesmith episode again, similar to last year, where we
Oh
just
God,
talked about
we're
shooting for 5 hours.
not doing as many times though.
Yeah, probably not. But because Corey Kispert, I think, is a little bit better of an overall player. But yeah, I mean, he's probably the best 3-point shooter in this class. You mentioned moving out without the ball. Not only is that key, I mean, really, it's key for him because he's not a primary ball handler. I mean, that's not what his strength is. So he needs to learn how to move. Well, he doesn't really need to. He already does it pretty naturally, but he cuts to the basket. He moves off screens, secondary pick and rolls off the ball. I mean, he does all of those little things that maybe people don't notice off the ball, but he gets himself open. So he's taking higher percentage threes too. So he's very smart without the ball, and I think that's one of the reasons that when you combine that with a nice form, That's why he knocks threes down at such a high percentage, because he's taking quality ones too. He's not just chucking them up. So I think when you combine all of that, it leads to a guy that's going to be pretty elite at the next level as a 3-point shooter. And, I said it last year with Aaron Nesmith, but when you can shoot at that high of a level, you're going to carve out some sort of role in the NBA. Does he have the superstar upside of some of the guys in this class? Definitely not. But when you have arguably the most valuable skill in the entire league, you're going to carve out a nice long career one way or another. So I think that's kind of the reality with him. The only other thing that I'll kind of say, we're talking offensively a lot. He's not a great defender by any means, and I don't know if he's ever going to be a great on-ball defender, but he has a high enough IQ, and I just talked about that offensively, but defensively, he also has a high enough IQ where I don't think he's going to be a liability in a good schemed defense. So, if he was in, just Milwaukee, Utah, and I'm not saying he's going to drop that far or anything, but if he's in a scheme where it's all about team defense, I think that he'll be fine. I don't think he would be a liability, and I don't think he's going to be an elite defender. So I don't know. That's not necessarily a strength, but I don't think that his defense is going to be a liability. Now, one-on-one, if he gets forced into isolation at all, which is maybe a way that people will try to attack him defensively, because I don't think that he would be able to guard somebody who was super athletic and super quick. I don't think that's going to be his strength. And I guess that's moving into weaknesses, so it's a good segue anyway. But
you're starting to talk about his weaknesses now.
So I didn't even have to say it. We're already segueing into it. So I think one-on-one he's really going to struggle, and I think but when you can shoot at that level, if they defensively account for him not being a great one-on-one defender and they try to prevent him guarding guys one-on-one, I don't think it's going to be the biggest issue, but it is definitely a weakness. And then we've talked about offensively shooting, but he doesn't create his own shot very well either. I mean, you'll see throughout these highlights where he does get to the basket, but that's not his strength. He's more moving off the ball, finding high quality shots, and he would be a great secondary scorer playing next to a playmaker, a guy that can find the open cutter, a guy that can find the guy that's open in the corner for a three, because Corey Kispert is going to get himself open. That's 100% what we've seen at Gonzaga, and he'll continue to do it at the next level. So I think that's going to be a weakness, though, and that's one of those things that limits his ceiling. And when you're talking about elite offensive playmakers, they're guys that can create their own shot and get to the basket at will. And I think part of that is his athleticism, is he's just not an explosive, quick player. That's just not his game. And you'll always hear it with him. And you hear this every year with a few players. He's just one of those guys. You're not taking him, in my opinion, to change your franchise. You're taking him as a high-level role player, and he's going to carve out a really long career because of that. So people tell you that that's a weakness, his ceiling. I don't think so, because you know what you're getting. And like I said, shooting is probably the NBA's most valuable skill right now. So anyone who can do that's going to have a nice long career.
Yeah, and you mentioned it, a lot of it with the ceiling, and that's partly limited. That's probably mainly because he ended up staying all 4 years at Gonzaga. He was actually gonna come out after his third season, but the whole pandemic and all that stuff made him reconsider. And he made the right decision, like doing the research. Like, if he would have came out last year, they were talking like a late second round pick. So he really vaulted himself with this strong senior season. Which I do have. Do you think that if someone stays all 4 years in college, that automatically limits their ceiling? Because that's my question with this. Do you think that's the case? If someone stays all 4 years, do you think that automatically limits their ceiling? Because that's whenever we talk about a guy that stays all 4 years, it's often associated with, okay, now he has a limited ceiling.
No, I don't think so. The reason I don't really discredit guys who stay all 4 years, because think about some of the other prospects we've talked about, right? Like Isaiah Jackson. I don't think he's going to be, or Zaire Williams, some of those younger guys. I don't think they're going to come in and produce at a high level right away, right? I mean, we talk about them being raw, they need seasoning. So realistically, by the time they're ready to produce in the NBA, they're going to be Corey Kispert's age, and Corey Kispert's going to come into the league right now. And I mean, he would be one that I would say is going to produce from day one, depending where he goes, and as long as he can carve out minutes. But he's being talked about potentially in the top 10, so he's probably going to get minutes from day one. So, but yeah, I don't think it really limits his ceiling because the one thing with him too is he did improve every year. I was just looking at his percentages. He took a higher volume of three every single season. So he averaged 3, then 4, then 5, then nearly 6.5 this year. And his 3-point percentage went up with volume. I mean, that's showing improvement right there. And that shows you that he, maybe he could have made that improvement in the NBA, but instead he made it in college, and he's going to be drafted higher because of it, probably. If he came out last season 2 years ago, he wouldn't have been talked about as a potential top 10 pick. And here we are. So
yeah, because he tested the draft waters last year, and he was projected to be a late second, so he decided to go back. So he definitely.
I think what limits his ceiling is just his athleticism in general. I've talked about athleticism not being a factor necessarily in determining if someone can be a high level scorer. But in terms of, I guess people say, this is an athletic guy. He has a lot of potential. I don't like when people say that. But for a guy like this that has all the skills except the high level of athleticism, that's when it can limit you a little bit, because I don't think he's going to learn to be quicker and more athletic overnight. I just can't see that being a scenario that happens. I don't think that happens. So
that's fair.
Any other weaknesses that you had for him?
No, I think you pretty much we pretty much got it.
Okay. So let's go to ideal fits then. I had a few here, and a lot of them were all bottom 5 to 7 teams in terms of 3-point percentage last year, because this is a guy that can help turn it around for you. One name that I did not see thrown out there a lot, but honestly, he would be a good fit with the Spurs, as much as I want them to.
I did have them down.
Okay, yeah, and I was surprised doing research. People weren't saying that, but they had the worst 3-point percentage in the league last year.
The Spurs are conducting a pre-draft interview with him.
Yeah, and like I said, I think that they need more star power, so I wouldn't be thrilled with that pick by any stretch of the imagination, because he just doesn't have the upside that I think they need, but he would fill a major hole for them. They do need more wing players, and once again, that's a system. If you put him in Pop's defensive system, I don't think he'd be a liability defensively. So I think it makes sense all the way around. He's just not exactly the upside guy that I'd like to see. But the other ones, New Orleans, they're still going to be looking to surround Zion with some shooting. And Brandon Ingram's not the highest level 3-point shooter either. I mean, he takes some, but his percentages aren't always great. And he's been improving in that regard, but they could use more shooters. They were in the bottom 5 in the league in percentages. Same with the Grizzlies, which kind of surprised me that they were so low in terms of 3-point percentage last season, because I thought, with Dylan Brooks and I thought they improved Desmond Bane last year. I thought they improved in that regard, but they're still one of the bottom teams in terms of 3-point percentage. And then so were the Knicks as well. So he could be a nice rotational 3-point shooter for the Knicks as well.
Yeah, I like that. I also had the Magic down. I mean, Magic could be a fit for pretty much any prospect, but
yes.
Who do the, realistically speaking, can you name one actual 3-point shooter on the Magic besides Terrence Ross?
No, no. I mean, because at this point, yeah, I mean, Cole Anthony was not very good at it last season. Markelle Fultz, when he was healthy, definitely was not a very strong 3-point shooter. So really nobody at this point. Evan Fournier is gone.
I think he would fit right in with. I would think he would be a solid choice for Orlando too.
Yeah, I mean, you could throw in the Rockets there as well. I don't know why when we did this group of prospects, I just am realizing the I thought they had 3 first-round picks, but they have 4 first-round picks, the Rockets. So, I mean, I've talked about them not being that intriguing because they don't have a great roster, but when you have that many first-round picks, you have an opportunity to make it a little bit interesting, and they're at least going to have some depth if some of those prospects don't pan out to be superstars. So really any prospect, I always feel like I want to say the Rockets because they have so many first round picks. So let's go to NBA comparison so we can wrap this up. I know the number one comparison that I saw everywhere was Joe Harris. And
Yeah,
honestly, you have to say it though because the
you have.
similarities are kind of uncanny. I mean, I
Yeah.
always try. I think it's fun to watch highlights. I come up with my NBA comparisons, and then I see what other people are saying, and I was like, "Oh, Joe Harris." And I looked around. I was like, "Okay, I'm not the only one
I'm
saying
like,
that."
oh,
So,
oh, damn it! I thought I had the perfect comparison. So everybody.
yep. But I did not, and I thought that was stupid Josh Giddey too. But then everybody had the same one as me. But whatever. So I mean, it's going to be any elite 3-point shooter that we've seen in the league, though. I've saw a few Kyle Korvers, which was another name that I had down.
I think
Um,
I think I like that, except I think that uh Kispert has the ability to like contribute in other areas.
yep, I definitely would agree that Korver was literally he came and shot threes and left. He didn't really rebound much. Didn't really. That's literally. I think Kispert's a better cutter. So the comparison that I think is very fair that I did not really see anywhere. I think Duncan Robinson of the Miami Heat is a really good one. We've seen what Duncan has done as a 3-point shooter the last 2 seasons for the Heat. Works really well off the ball. He's in a really good defensive system with Spoelstra and hasn't really been a liability there. So I really like that one too. And then you could say any of the Bogdanovics, either one of them. They're just the same person at this
Like
point.
there's a
But
cult of the NBA.
yeah, basically. But both of them in Utah and Atlanta. And then the other one I just wrote down, I just mentioned him a minute ago. It's not a perfect comparison, but I just think their offensive styles are similar. But I put Evan Fournier as well. Just another high-level 3-point shooter that moves well without the ball. Fournier can drive to the basket a little bit better than Kispert, but no comparison is going to be perfect. But I think Joe Harris, honestly, and actually I like the Duncan Robinson one. I think that's a good one too.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no perfect I put down shades of Klay Thompson, mainly
Mm-hmm.
on the offensive end, with his 3-point ability, moving without the ball. You watch tape of both of them moving off the ball, and it's very similar. In terms of Klay running off screens. Now, which is why now that I'm thinking about it, I would not mind him with Golden State.
Mm-hmm.
Give Golden State another 3-point shooter. I mean, that I wouldn't hate.
Yeah, I
So
don't think that would be terrible.
no, not at all. So yeah, I see shades of Klay Thompson in him, especially. I mean, Klay Thompson's one of the premier 3-and-D guard might be the premier 3-and-D guard in the league when he's healthy. I don't think Kispert will probably ever have that level of defense, but
Mm-hmm.
just simply from an offensive perspective, I think their games are pretty similar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think that's unreasonable. All right, so I think that's all that we have on Corey Kispert. We're going to keep it rolling here over the next few weeks, so make sure you guys tune in to Doc and Caveman, Time Out with Doc and Caveman, that is. Make sure you subscribe as well on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. So we appreciate the support, and we'll see you guys next time.
Yep.